part 3 and possibly final of session 92. Let's talk here about the iconography and qualities of the potentiator of the mind. Let's begin. In the last episode, we discussed the functions of the potentiator of the mind and many questions regarding these dynamics between the potentiator and the rest of the mind, with the matrix, with the significator, and so on. And now we're going to go into the iconography of the potentiator of the mind, which is, of course, the card in the tarot number 2. And I left right before last session. I left right before we started exploring this. So we're going to pick up really quick. I think we can finish this session today. We'll see. It's not, they're not very long questions or answers, and they are all in terms of, mostly I would say, in terms of the different depiction, symbology that is in the card. So again, this all has to do with studying the card, and you can also check in the description. There is a link for lawofone.info, where you can go at the bottom and see there are categories. I believe there are on the main page, but if you go to any session, I know that if you go to any session and then you go to the bottom, you can see there are links that says tarot study. And it's helpful to look at all the imageries. Remember, there is 22 cards, and so you can have that as support for your study. In any case, let's find out what we have in this direction of the iconography of card number 2. And so this is question 21, and Don says, card number 2. The potentiator of the mind. We see a female sitting on a rectangular block. She's veiled and between two pillars which seem to be identically covered with drawings, but one much darker than the other. I am assuming that the veil represents the veil between the conscious and subconscious, or matrix and potentiator. Is this correct? And Ross says this is quite correct. So you can check, if you're on YouTube, you can check at the image here, and you can see that the figure is sitting on a rectangular box, or seems to be sitting on something that looks like a square. Now, as far as I understand it, the square in the cards always depict the illusion, which means this, third density. So how do we know we're in third density? Because we have 6 organs. We have 5 sense organs and 1 mental one. That is the one that generates thoughts and images and visions and so on. So that is what it represents. Think about it that way. That's the matrix. That's what the matrix is registering all the time, these senses. And so the box represents that. Keep that in mind. They're going to talk about the box in, I think, the next question or the other one. But just always keep in mind that in the tarot, the boxes, the squares, the rectangles, all these squared things represent the illusion of third density. So what else did Don say here that we can look at the card? She's veiled, so there is a veil in her eyes. But look at, the veil is not like a curtain or drapes. You know, it's completely covering her eyes. It's porous. You can see through it, and yet it hides something. So to me, that represents the quality of the veil, which is permeable. It can be penetrated. You can gaze through it. So we have the rectangular block, the veil, the veil is what he assumes, Don, that represents the veil between the conscious and the subconscious, or matrix and potentiator, which is correct. And what else do we have? We have the pillars. So the pillars, we're going to discuss them further, but we can already see that the pillars represent one dark, one light, negative, positive path. Let's keep looking at the questions now. Question 22, Don says, I am assuming that she sits between the different colored columns, one on her left, one on her right. The dark one is on her left, to indicate at this position an equal opportunity, you might say, for potentiation of the mind to be of the negative or positive path. Would Ra comment on this? Yes. Ra says, although this is correct, it is not as perceptive as the notice that the priest, as the figure has been called, sits within a structure in which polarity symbolizes, as you correctly noted, by the light and dark pillars, is an integral and necessary part. So, okay. It is not only what was Don's assumption. Offering an equal opportunity. I think that's actually very, very clear what Don said, right? She sits between the different columns because there is potentiation, equal opportunity for potentiation for both positive and negative. So what is Ra expanding on from that keen observation, which I think we all got as well? She sits within a structure in which polarity, symbolized by the pillars, is an integral and necessary part. Okay, so we are emphasizing here the foundational aspect of polarity for the potentiator to be the way it is. Now it's interesting, I'll note this, that before the veil, it seems that these pillars were not there, seems to me, because potentiator is trying to provide potentiation towards the negative and the positive path, and yet the negative path was not there when the veil was not present. So it seems like the veil creates these two pillars, and so the potentiator is there for, or created in third density illusion, in this third density illusion, through the veil, to have those. So yeah, that's as far as we can get here. They're symbolized, correctly noted, by the light and the dark pillars as an integral and necessary part of potentiation. Again, the distinction made that it is after the veil, as far as I know. I don't think there were dark and light pillars prior to the veil. Then Ra finishes and says, the unfed mind has no polarity, just as intelligent infinity has none. The nature of the sub logos, which offers the third density experience, is one of polarity, not by choice but by careful design. We perceive an unclear statement. The polarity of potentiator is there not for the matrix to choose, it is there for the matrix to accept as given. So we're going to find out that the significator is the one that is paired with the choosing. Remember, the choice is card 22, so we pair them both. And we know that the choice is actually what's making the active choice, because it represents consciousness to me, intelligent infinity. So that's the one that is inevitably at the end making the choice. Nobody else. There is no significator and choice, like two separate entities. There is only one entity, but we can see its parts. There is consciousness of the choice, and that is paired with the significator. So, okay. In analyzing what Ra says here, they repeat something that we have talked about at least twice, I think, which is to say that the matrix of the mind has no polarity, right? It is only there to be given what is offered. So the matrix is like a canvas, right? I've been calling it a screen, or the interface, which is, it has to be blank. Whatever is projected in the interface then is a result of the program, whatever we have programmed into the manifestation, the creation, which is our own creation. And so just like intelligent infinity has no polarity, the matrix doesn't either. It is the subconscious or unconscious mind that offers some sort of view, which can be then determined by polarity, and that's what the unconscious part is in this projection of reality. Interesting also that they call sub logos. They say the nature of the sub logos, which offers the third density experience, is one of polarity, not by choice but by careful design. Interesting, because I think this is the only part in the raw material where they refer to a triple sub logos. If you remember, I think the general acceptance is that the logos is always the galaxy, then the sub logos is the sun in our case, and then the sub logos is the mind body spirit complex, which acts as a analog for higher self being the one that is guiding the process of incarnation. So now they call it sub logos. So is there a sub within us? Probably. Some people interpret this as this being the matrix, so the matrix being the sub logos, especially after Ra says that the unfed mind, the matrix, is as intelligent infinity. So how do we tie in this with all the cosmology? I don't think I can do it. But they could also be referring as the sub logos as us without the higher self, you see. So I don't know. I would leave this for interpretation to you. Then they say we perceive an unclear statement. I guess they're referring to Don's statement here. And then they finalize by saying that the polarity of potentiator is there not for the matrix to choose. Again, the matrix is not choosing. The matrix function is to simply receive, right? It is there for the matrix to accept as given, so receive as it is given. The monitor is not choosing which windows it's going to display. It is only there receiving what it is. So yeah, we begin to flesh out a little bit more the dynamics between these parts of the archetypical mind, which again is just the structure in which we are experiencing life. Don't try to complicate it much. Always keep in mind that this is the practical aspect of understanding the archetypical mind, is that we understand the different parts of our shared experience. We all experience this through the different parts of the archetypical mind. Nobody can say, oh, my significator doesn't exist, or I don't have a transformation because I haven't experienced transformation in a long time, whatever. We're all under this structure. It's just that nobody uses them or uses it in the same way. And Ra talked about this in the past. Let's move to the next question. This is question 23. And Don says, in other words, this particular illusion has polarity as its foundation, which might be represented by the structural significance of these columns. Is this correct? Ra says, this is correct. So What I said about the pillars is actually true in the sense that they exist because the veil, right? This particular illusion has polarity as its foundation, says Don. So this is represented by the columns. It's the structure of this reality, of this human experience, this third density. And yeah, that's because of the veiling process. So easy peasy there. Question 24, Don says, it seems to me that the drawings on each of these columns are identical, but that the left-hand column, that is one of the priestess left, has been shaded much darker, indicating that the events or the experiences may be identical in the incarnation, but may be approached and viewed and utilized with either polarity as the bias. Is this in any way correct? Ra says, this is correct. You will note also from the symbol denoting spirit in manifestation upon each pillar that the one infinite creator is not respecter of polarity, but offers itself in full to all. Yet another point to be made about the negative polarity, and at least in view of those who need to accept the negativity of the world, those who, which are many, especially on the positive path. I'm not sure why I said that, because everybody's on the positive path who is arguing against or having trouble with the negativity of the world. Those on the negative path are rejoicing in it. But I guess what I meant to say is that those on the positive path who are affected still by this, which is the vast majority initially, they need to understand that there is a negativity in this world. To accept that is to accept that they are the creator too, that it is all the creator. There is no individual beings doing something against the creator. It is the creator playing the game, playing police and thief, that kind of game, but a little bit more into the question of Don, which I think goes unacknowledged by the rest of what Ra is saying, which I'll get back to. But first, Don said, in essence, that both pillars have the same imagery. Now, if you look at it, you will see that, yes, it has a sort of same imagery, right? The same symbols and depictions on each pillar, but they are experienced differently. Much like when we look at catalyst, something happens in the world. Let's say a world event, like it happened in 2020, and everybody started interpreting it differently depending on their view. Well, in a much more general way, and yet the first division is, how do you perceive it? Do you perceive this negatively or positively? So all catalyst that is coming through is going with that intention. How will you face this? Will you face it with positivity or negativity? And that is the process of evolution, of course. We can't be forced to see things positively. Let me make this statement because I think it's important. For spiritual seekers, there seems to be a predilection for trying to always see things positively. Stop doing that. Now, I don't wish to infringe on free will. If you want to do that, you will learn eventually that it is not about forcing yourself to see things positively. I have to love everything. No, if you hate something, hate it. Look at it. Look at your hatred. Krishnamurti used to make this a very important point. He used to say, people are always, looking at, we have to be kind, we have to be loving, No, accept that you're a hateful person. Jesus actually said this, and I think this is canon. where he said, whoever doesn't hate their parents, doesn't hate their neighbors, and all these things. I love mystics, they're so contradictory. Whoever doesn't hate them, then they're not worthy of the kingdom of heaven. You see, like, it's there, it's plain sight. You have to face all your negativity. You have to face all of that. So it's fine, you know. Don't force yourself to be loving. I did that, and it was terrible. Experience showed me just by how I felt that it was just no way. I have to face my hatred and my jealousy and my envy and anything, my greed and all these things. They're there. Why would I hide them? They're gonna start creating a cancer in me. I'm not talking about physical, but mental cancer, which can be actually experienced as physical cancer as well. But anyhow, yes, reality is being colored by polarity. So it is us. It's up to us to see how we look at it. And what else did Don say? Nothing else. But we can talk about then what I started this answer with, which was that the one infinite creator is no respecter of polarity, meaning that it doesn't have a preference. You see, that is, I believe, the symbol denoting spirit and manifestation is the Ankh, which is there in both pillars. So it means that symbol of spirituality shows that spirit is in everything. And again, like I said, this is a very hard to swallow pill for some people who, in a way, they look at, because that's what religion and frankly most spiritual traditions have always talked about. They neglect the negative path because they're not teaching it, of course. And so from an outside point of view, if we're not students, adepts, monks, nuns, or deep studies students of these teachings, then we may look at it as oh, there is only good in the world, and it should be, so we don't understand why there's evil. This is a very common question that people who don't study the law of one and just start studying spirituality, their question inevitably is, why is there evil in the world if reality is love? And so non-duality, I love it because they say the same thing. You know, there is only consciousness. There is no such thing as evil. There are acts, and there are acts that are in accordance with the knowing that you are consciousness and awareness, and there are acts in ignorance, which are what we consider evil. But there should be seen as confused acts. When we act out of confusion, we're not being ourselves, you see, which goes in line with the law of one. I love non-duality, of course, because it is very practical and simple. It just says, if you become aware of who you are, can you do evil things? You couldn't. You could not do evil things, or what we think is evil, or wrong things. You cannot act confused when you are in clarity, period. So get in touch with who you are, and then not only will you clear out your supposed evil or dark things, but you will not be able to see in others. It won't be evil per se. It would be just, the lost sheep. That's what they are, the black sheep of the family. They're just confused. They don't know what they're doing. So again, we can look at it from this poetic perspective of it's the one infinite creator acting in both polarities. Let's go to the next question. Don says in question 25, there seems to be a book in the Priestess lap which is half hidden by the robe or material that covers her right shoulder. It would seem that this indicates that knowledge is available if the veil is lifted, but it is not only hidden by the veil, but hidden partially by her very garment, which she must somehow move to become aware of the knowledge which she has available. Is this correct? Ra says, in that the conceit of the volume was not originated by Ra, we ask that you release the volume from its strictured form. Your perceptions are quite correct. The very nature of the feminine principle of mind, which in Ra's suggestion was related specifically to what may be termed sanctified sexuality, is itself, without addition, the book, which neither the feminine nor the male principle may use until the male principle has reached and penetrated in a symbolically sexual fashion the inner secrets of the feminine principle. Let's go bit by bit. We're talking about a book that is not present anymore in the card, that is at least presented by us, presented to us by LNL Research. The cards that are depicted there do not have the book, that potentiator card. So that book, even though it's not there, and I kind of like that Ra says, even though the book is not part of the original card, it is correct. Your perceptions are correct. Which goes to show how much we can look at a card and have perceptions about it. They may not be as accurate as, they could be, but there's always some good observation. Now, even though the book is no longer part of the card, the original card, and that's what we have, Ra does describe the penetrating of this protection, right? This, which is not the veil, right? There is a sort of, it's covered by a sort of shawl, I think it's what it's called, a mantle. But Ra says that the very nature of the feminine principle was related to the term sanctified sexuality. So there are parallels here in terms of sacred sexuality. Of course, when we hear sexuality, we immediately think about biological sex, which is not really the suggestion here, but rather because we symbolically can see spirituality in its dynamics as sexual, we can see that there is a penetrating here. Well, we are penetrating that which is awaiting to be penetrated. In this case, the mantle, right? We want to see that knowledge that is there. And so that's why I don't think I need to explain the male and female principle here. I think you should know it very well by now. It's a very simple, basic definition of dynamics. We all have this in all of our actions. So, okay, so the book, which neither the feminine nor the male principle may use until the male principle has reached and penetrated the inner secrets of this feminine principle. So I'm not sure why they say neither the masculine or the feminine, right? Or male and feminine can't use until the male principle has penetrated the inner secrets of the feminine principle. Must be an interplay of the potentiator being feminine, which holds that book of knowledge, and then there is the matrix, I suppose, when it's penetrating, when it's using, right? The matrix is what reaches to the potentiator. And that's the act of penetration of the mantle that is covering the knowledge. But why do they refer to neither male nor feminine can use the book? Yeah, I don't know. That one escapes my mind. But in any case, it's to me it's nice that they talk about the knowledge that is there, because that's basically what we're looking for when we are using the unconscious mind. Remember that the potentiator is the unconscious mind, so we're looking at it as a resource of information. And so that can be the book. I think the book should remain there, not be taken away, but they said take it away. Lastly, they say all robes, in this case indicating the outer garments of custom, shield these principles. Thusly, there is great dynamic tension, if you will, betwixt the matrix and the potentiator of the mind. So these dynamic tensions are the nature between matrix and potentiator because of the veiling process. It seems like the veil is also present in that shoal, but the funny thing is that it is not on the left side, so it's on the right side. They'll talk about this more, and maybe we'll get more answers there, but it seems to be represented there too, to me, in my very, very limited interpretation of the iconography here. But Ra does say all rows, in this case indicating the outer garment, which, you know, it's what they're wearing in the card, they shield these principles, so they cover the principles, so it's not readily available. It requires work to use the unconscious mind. It's not easily available. So just like prior to the veil, there were no two pillars, there was no polarity, negative polarity present. It was there always, you know, as potential, but it wasn't possible to develop. So prior to the veil, no pillars. Then prior to the veil, of course, no shielding, no covering of these principles. They were readily available again. And so there is great dynamic tension between matrix of potentiator because of this, because of the nature of the potentiator being veiled. I guess one last thing that I would say for the students of the Tarot is that look at the importance of the unconscious mind here, the potentiator being so veiled that it requires most of the work. Yes, so these dynamic tensions are very important for the spiritual seeker and for the adept specifically. Let's move on. Question 26. Don says, are there any other parts of this picture that were not given by Ra? Ra says the astrological symbols offered are not given by Ra. Now, I have no idea which astrological symbols were there, but we don't see any anymore in the card. Question 27. Don says, the fact that the priestess sits atop the rectangular box indicates to me the potentiator of the mind has dominance or is above and over the material illusion. Is this in any way correct? Ra says, let us say rather that this figure is imminent, near at hand, shall we say, within all manifestation. The opportunities for the reaching to the potentiator are numerous. However, of itself, the potentiator does not enter manifestation. So, in this illusion, just like we can say that we don't know anybody, truly, we don't know anybody, and we don't know ourselves either. Understanding is not of this illusion, what Ra would say. In the same way, then, the potentiator never enters into manifestation, so we never see it fully. We do see the interaction, so I would say that obviously the potentiator is projecting itself through the matrix, and so we register it. We cannot fully see it. Now the whole question is based upon Don noticing that the the figure that represents the potentiator is on top of the box, on top of the illusion. So is it above the illusion? I would say that is inside of the illusion. I would rather look at everything from the inside out, right? Because we know that from this, what we call inside, is not really inside, but it's a better direction for me than above and below. What's inside is pure intelligent infinity, which is what I really am, right? When I get in touch with myself, then I would see that I have no limits, I was never born, and I would never die. That's just the space within me, the true self, not the self that I identify as form. So everything that is right out here, it must have come from inside. So the potentiator of the mind is something that is a resource in this direction of inside, because it's not here manifested outside. So yes, it's inside, it's not sitting at top, and that's why I like that Ra says is immanent, is indwelling. That's what immanent also means, is within, right? Near at hand, because obviously if everything that I have here, this projected matrix, is coming from my informed subconscious, then of course, this is always at hand. Yes, it is within all manifestation, but it is not entering manifestation. It does not enter properly. I guess it's like looking at a film, right? At a movie theater, if they still do this, which I believe they do because they project it to the screen. The film itself never enters the matrix, right? It never manifests fully, and yet it projects itself through the light of consciousness, and that's the potentiator, if you will. Is what the film is. Consciousness being that which is the light, which has no polarity. It's just one single beam of light. The polarity is within the film. The film is what creates form. Light has no form. Not in this analogy, of course. So, yeah, beautiful. I love that. Next question. Question 28, Don says, would the half moon on the crown represent the receptivity of the subconscious mind? Well, turns out that the symbol, as Ra says, this symbol is not given by Ra, but it is not distasteful, for within your own culture, the moon represents the feminine, the sun the masculine. Thusly, we accept this portion as a portion of the image, for it seems without significant distortion. So you see, even though many symbols that were in the card no longer there, they were not originally meant to be there by Ra. They do have a place in terms of interpretation. So they seem to like the fact that the moon is feminine, at least in our culture, and I think in most cultures it used to be always feminine. So we have a feminine principle within the potentiator. Yeah, we like that. That's it. That's all they say. It's a nurturing one too. Well, we're moving along pretty good. Let's go to the next question. Question 29, Don says, was the symbol on the front of the Priestess shirt given by Ra? Ra says the crux ansata is the correct symbol. The addition and slight distortion of this symbol thereby is astrological and may be released from its structure. I think that that's no longer there. They might have corrected it. I can't remember the notes that LNL Research added to the cards. They said, I think, matrix and potentiator of mind, perhaps catalyst and experience as well. 2 or 4 of the first cards were modified, and then the other ones were used by from, I think, another I forget if it was C.C. Zane who they used the cards because of copyright issues with the Rider Waite, I think it's called. I'm not very knowledgeable about this, so please forgive me if I'm expressing some nonsense here. But yeah, they didn't use a specific deck. They modified some, if I can trust my memory. But yeah, in any case, the card that we have for reference has the Crux Ansata, which is the Ankh, by the way. And so, yes, whatever it was released from its stricture, it was done already. And I will just add that the Crux Ansata means... Okay, that's the next question. I won't add that. Let's go to the next question. This is question 30. Don says, would this Crux Ansata then be indicating a sign of life or spirit in living matter? Ra says, this is quite correct. Moreover, it illuminates a concept which is a portion of the archetype, which has to do with the continuation of the consciousness, which is being potentiated in incarnation, beyond incarnation. Very tempting, this last part, to ramble on. So first, Don's observation is correct. He says that this is indicating life, basically. You know, this is being fed by life, by the spirit, which is correct. I would say this is correct of each card, but here Ra adds that they're showing the nature of how your life goes on. So the mind that is being potentiated doesn't end in death, of course. What is lost, Ra talked about this too, what is lost after incarnation in death is, curiously, that which is insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it is almost 90% of what we perceive. So it's a very important thing to contemplate. The fact that 90%, I'm giving a percentage here, this was not added in the raw material, please don't quote me on this. But they said that the vast majority of what is lost is insignificant, or at least they suggested this. It is unnecessary, stuff that is unnecessary, and that which we worry about, right? That's why there is a big relief. That which remains is that which is obviously hidden to us. The result, the product of our experience here is hidden, and yet it is guiding our process. So you can see that the tension, not the tension, the dynamic here that exists between that which is being fed continuously and which potentiates our life, and how that which we perceive in life adds in, possibly, if we are aware and conscious and actively working on it, adds to this potentiation. So there is a dynamic here between matrix and potentiator. All of that is feeding, of course, something that is going beyond incarnation, as Ra suggests here. Because your life doesn't end here, or rather, yes, this experience as a individual being ends here, but the product of all of that continues on, and that is what we call reincarnation. And so they say it illuminates a concept which is a portion of the archetype, right? The unconscious mind. Here we're talking about a portion of the mind which is concerned with all the biases contained therein, right? Or everything that has been collected, everything that has been fashioned, that has been bought into, the way in which we see life is remaining there. So I would even go further to say that this is part of the collective view, the collective thoughts that create our view, which determines how we experience reality moving on. Back to third density, moving on to fourth density, or returning to whatever this mind came from. We're definitely finishing today. Yay. Question 31, Don says, were the grapes depicted upon the cloth or cloth covering the shoulder of the priestess of Ra's communication? Grapes, were they there? Ra says, yes, the grapes were there. Don says, in question 32, we have taken those, the grapes, as indicating the fertility of the subconscious mind. Is this correct? Ra likes this. We know that we liked it because look at what they say. Just hear the way they say it. This is correct, O student, but note ye the function of the mantle. There is great protection given by the very character of potentiation. To bear fruit is a protected activity. I love it. I enjoy it when they get so excited that they change the tone, you know, and they get sophisticated, even more sophisticated. So this is correct. They denote fertility, and that is the capacity to bear fruits by penetrating this mantle, penetrating this which covers the right path. I'm not sure if I mentioned already well, but the figure has a covered right shoulder. Right shoulder is covered, and the left one is naked, right? So this is indicating, of course, and I think we will talk about this finally in this session, but this is indicating, of course, the positive and negative path and how the positive is protected, right? We'll talk about that. Ra says there is great protection given by the very character of potentiation. To bear fruit is a protected activity. So they're not saying it, but this great protection is obviously on the right path, on the positive path. At least that's what I get here, because that's what the mantle is covering, right? So yeah, that's the function of the mantle. The mantle, if the function of the mantle is to provide fertility or to bear fruit, and it's always on the right, only on the right shoulder, then we're talking about the positive path here. The positive path is protected. Let's find out more about that. Don says, the protection here seems to be depicted as being on the right hand side but not the left. Would this indicate greater protection for the positive path than the negative? And Ra says, you perceive correctly an inborn bias offering to the seeing eye and listening, meaning listening, ear, information concerning the choice of the more efficient polarity. We would at this time, as you may call it, suggest one more full query. Completely unrelated, but it's always funny how they give us this hints, you know, in terms of time. They say, at this time, as you may call it, not us. We don't call it that. We know more than linear time. But yeah, going back to the protection, it is true that the positive path is more protected. And we can see here an inborn bias by whom? By the logos, offering to the seeing eye and listening ear information concerning the choice of the more efficient polarity. This is the reason why we have a majority, after the veil, majority of positive beings than negative. I think the number is 9-1, 90% positive, 10% negative, according to Ra. And that's because there is and it's interesting here on on our solar system, because the sun, the logos, has a bias towards kindness, and so it has created these hints along the way for us to realize that yes, the positive path is the right one. And yet we have Mars, Maldek, and I don't know if I can call, but yeah, we could say for sure that the Earth has this too. I'm hesitant to call it that because we know that we have inheritance from Maldek and Mars. So some people say, oh, it's the Martians and the Maldekians who are here, distorting reality. But I don't know. I think we as monkeys, as primates, we were kind of bent towards bellicosity too. So I don't know. I think the Logos has had a very interesting experiment here. In any case, what's important is to know that there is a protection in the positive path. I think this is the protection that we see as we dive deeper into this knowledge of we being the creator. Just that is, it doesn't matter how we approach it. And I think that's why I see that within the Law of One, people who study the Law of One, they start on the right foot, right? Because what is emphasized here? You are the creator. What? Wait, no, religion told me otherwise. But no, you are the creator. It doesn't matter how we take this knowledge, it's going to always lead us into a feeling of harmony, of knowing that if I am the creator and everything else is the creator, then I see it. I see this unity. That's it. If you can see that, you have no longer any need to study anything. And yet you will be compelled to study it because you love it. You love it so much that you want to keep going. But yeah, there is greater protection on the right side than on the left. I think this obviously has to do because of the entropy that is natural in the negative side. The negative side, there's always bickering and fighting and struggle for dominance, struggle for control. So there will be some polarity lost there at some point, because you're always competing. That's the thing. And we have bought into this idea biologically I don't think Darwin meant it this way. It's just that Darwin was interpreted this way, because even he said at some point in his famous book, which I forget the name, he said that was it Of Species, I think, something like that. He said that these are my observations, but if they're true, it would be kind of stupid. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing terribly. But yeah, he basically said that these are my observations. I mean, I'm a scientist. This is what I'm seeing. But if it's true, then it's kind of meaningless. It's kind of stupid. And it is. We're not competitive creatures. Who said that? It's almost like saying, and I like when people say this, I've mentioned this in the past, in spirituality, some people with very clever egos, they say, no, the ego is a necessary thing in third density, because look at what we have done, that's because of the ego, so it is necessary. Well, that is unconsciously saying killing is needed in this reality. We humans are belligerent, and we humans are terrible beings that like to cause harm on others. It's the same thing as people that say, being aggressive is natural in humans, so we must admit that. Or Freud's very intelligent way to describe psychology, and yet calling it blind libido, like that's what's driving everything. But I think Freud is also misunderstood in many ways because of that. I think he saw the nature of the ego, yes, and how it acts in the sense of lack. But like most of these scientists and philosophers, they might have been missing the point that consciousness is, in and of itself, fully complete, and it has no polarity. But that's a mystical view, and not many got it. So yeah, I would disagree that we need all of this. It happened, sure, that's part of the experience, but I would disagree that this is needed. So no. Okay, so let's find out what the last question is, and we'll finish. Don says, question 34, I will just then attempt an example of the potentiator of mind acting. Would, as the infant gains time in incarnation, would it experience, I should probably read this, would the infant experience the potentiator offering both positive and negative potential acts or thoughts, shall I say, for the matrix to experience, which then begin to accumulate in the matrix and color it one way or the other in polarity depending upon its continuing choice of that polarity offered by the potentiator? Is this in any way correct? So, kind of an entanglement there. But Ross says, firstly, again, may we distinguish between the archetypical and the process of incarnational experience of the mind-body-spirit complex. Secondly, each potentiation which has been reached by the matrix is recorded by the matrix but experienced by the significator. The experience of the significator of this potentiated activity is, of course, dependent upon the acuity of its processes of catalyst and experience. May we ask if there are briefer queries before we leave this instrument? So, I guess I can sum up Don's question as saying his analogy, right? His example is that the infant, while in incarnation, of course, experiences the potentiator offering both positive and negative, right? It offers both, and then the matrix experiences. That's the correction that Rod's going to make. For the matrix to experience, the matrix does not experience, the matrix records. It receives, right, from the potentiator. Is the significator the ones that is going to, let me see, how do I decide this? How do I call upon the choice to make this choice? Because the significator could also be looking at it and saying, well, I'm indifferent in terms of how to look at this. I don't know how to look at it. That's the sinkhole of indifference that Ra talks about, that the majority of people are. So we can see that even though the significator has or could be paired with the choice, most people don't use it. They just go through life without consciously choosing. They may unconsciously choose, perhaps, or buy into a specific illusion within the illusion. And so that's the correction, which then begin to accumulate in the matrix. I think, yes, whatever is registered kind of accumulates in the matrix. That would be right. And color it one way or another. Depending upon, right, the continuous choice of the polarity, which if we pair it with the significator, then it's fine. That's why Ra kind of clarifies it very briefly, because they had to go. Carla's energies were already going away. So yeah, Ra says, first, they need to distinguish between the archetypical mind and the process of incarnational experience. Very important. I think this is the second or third time that they mention it. Don't confuse, third time actually. Don't confuse the archetypical mind with that which is experiencing reality, which is the mind-body-spirit complex. Secondly, each potentiation that has been reached by by the matrix, right? Each potentiation that the matrix has kind of said, because of what I've seen, I want more of this, right? That's what the matrix projects. You know, it's almost like when the algorithm on YouTube, think about it as the matrix, right? The algorithm is going to potentiate whatever comes out on your feed on YouTube or Instagram even, or any platform really now that uses algorithms. And so the more you look for certain things is going to feed more of that to you, right? And so that is the act of potentiation. And they clarified is recorded by the matrix but experienced by the significator. Lastly, the final point is the experience of the significator of this potentiated activity is dependent upon the acuity of its processes of catalyst and experience. So the intensity, the sharpness of the how we process catalyst and experience, then we lack words, because we have the experience of the significator dependent on the acuity of experience. Experience with a capital E is the archetype of experience, and then experience with lowercase, with lowercase, that's just what the significator is experiencing, right? The experience. We need more words, man. Okay, so yeah, the experience of the significator depends on the archetypes of the catalyst and experience, the acuity, the sharpness of these processes, which again, it just translates into how much does the person puts an effort into contemplating, meditating, or processing, integrating catalyst and experience. Then that would feed the significator much more, period. That's it. Very simple. I think the only hard thing about this is to follow, all the concepts and all the different functions that they all have. It's not very difficult, honestly. What shouldn't be confused with difficulty is the amount of effort that you put into study it or to live it, which is really what the archetypical mind is all about. I put in my slides the last question, so I'll just read it for some reason. Let me find out why I put this last question, which is question 35. At the very least, because of Ra's way to say goodbye, which is also very inspiring. But all right, last question is question 35, and Don says, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact? Ra says the support group is functioning well. The instrument itself might ponder some early words and consider their implications. We say this because the continued calling upon vital energies, if allowed to proceed to the end of the vital energy, will end this contact. There is not the need for continued calling upon these energies. The instrument must find the key to this riddle or face a growing loss of this particular service at this particular space-time nexus. I still have one more slide to read, but I've found out why I put this last question. Again, as a refresher, you know that I don't include this because usually it's just everything's well, you're doing well, massage the instrument or put her in the jacuzzi or whatever they had or they were buying. I don't know if they had it. All that, and then just say, the regular I am Ra, I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator, and so on, which we will read right now. But here there is a very important point that I think is something to also contemplate individually by us. What was happening? Carla Even though her vital energies were low, she was still determined to do the contact. Now, is that something bad? Who can say that? Was Jesus wrong going back to Jerusalem and, being crucified? No. Why did he do that? Because he did it out of the passion that he had for this teaching. And so he knew, if I go back, I'll get killed. But I don't care. I'll go back because this is what I know I have to do. So was Carl doing the same thing? Perhaps. But Ra said, there is a choice. You don't have to be doing this. Ponder it. Was Ra infringing free will here? Maybe. Were they doing it out of love for Carla? Most certainly, in one way or another. The point is that Carla was hell-bent on doing this. She confessed this. She didn't care if she would die there at the bed. All she cared is that she would provide this as a service to humanity. And she did. And she paid the price, even though she ended up living a long time, thank God. And she provided us with more and more information and more of her beauty in this planet, whose legacy is still, changing people's lives. So that's commendable. And Ra did say, if she proceeds, then she would basically die. So think about it carefully, in essence. How is this practical for us? Well, look at your life, see what you're doing, and see how this may apply for some consideration. I have nothing else to say there. What I will say is what Ra says. All is well. The alignments are exemplary. I am Ra. I leave you, my friends, in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. Conclusions, right away. There is beauty in seeing that we all have an unconscious mind. I'm just going to leave it at this. This can go on and on for minutes and minutes. But do this with me right now, if you can. Notice that there is a peace, a space. Peace equals space. It almost have the same letters. So peace is that space that you are. Notice that everything that is coming through, which is recorded right now as the matrix, before you give it any judgment, before you define anything, before thought gets in the way, right? That is the matrix. Between that peaceful space that is you and this matrix, which is being colored by something, that something is the potentiator of the mind, constantly projecting. Every change that we make in the matrix is because we've made a choice. This dynamic is everything. If you understand this dynamic and you don't like what it's being registered out there, then you know that it's coming from inside of you, not from the outside. You ever notice that? Somehow when you change, everything changes. So doesn't that hint at the fact that everything is being created by you? The thing is that we're not aware how it is being created. Sometimes we prefer ignorance. Not willingly, of course, but because we're used to it and we have little time, we would say, to delve deep into the truth of why we behave the way we do, why we think the way we do. And so it's only a matter of choice, of deciding to try to understand why I act the way I do. It's a constant challenging of whatever it is coming through. Not because challenge is a problem, but because challenge is liberating. allowing only those things that inspire you, that motivate you, that makes you feel complete, which is truth. Truth makes you feel complete. Speaking of complete, I complete this session at this moment, and we have nothing else of session 92. I thought it was going to be 4 parts, but we did it. We did it together. Thank you as usual for following all the way up to here. I appreciate you. As I've been saying lately, if you want to support my channel and what I do as I approach the end of this material, which I'll continue to do, of course, and we still have a long way. In any case, if you want to support me, go to the description. You can find Patreon there and other links to find out more about what I do. Thank you again. I hope you have a very pleasant, peaceful, harmonious rest of your day or night. Sleep well if it's late for you, or enjoy the day, whatever you are. Take care, and I'll see you in session 93, first part.